Oh my god, what the hell happened to Balmora? This video is, without a doubt, the most requested project I undertake of all time. And since I've been on a bit of a tangent lately with the original 2002 Morrowind, I decided to give it a try in the Elder Scrolls Online. Up until half a year ago, Skyrim was the only Elder Scrolls game I had ever played seriously. Last month, I decided to play Morrowind for the very first time, and now, logically, I gotta see how it holds up in ESO. It took me just over 30 hours to 100% complete the Morrowind DLC for the Elder Scrolls Online. Every quest, every story, every fish, I even did the raid. With the magic of editing, we're gonna turn those 30 hours of content into around 30 minutes for your viewing convenience. Now I know in this video we're kind of clashing two generations of gamers. Please, God, no fighting in the comments. I'm serious, my last videos were basically war zones. Let's start with some very important background information you need to know. The Elder Scrolls Online takes place exactly 741 years before the events of the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. While you're watching this video, you may ask yourself why the environment looks so different. Why is ESO's Morrowind so much more lush and vibrant, lore-wise, not the obvious technological limitations of 2002? From what we know, Dagoth awoke in the year 882 in the Second Era. That's exactly 300 years after ESO. When he awoke, that period was called the Days of Fire. I don't know if that's the official lore reason why Morrowind's environment is so dead in the Elder Scrolls III, but that would be my best guess. Another thing that's weird, if you didn't know, is that the events of ESO take place during one calendar year. This entire game and its decades worth of content takes place during one single year. This means the Morrowind DLC we're going to be playing today takes place over a couple days at maximum. And speaking of a couple days at maximum, I don't want another month-long gap between my uploads. For the purpose of time, I'll be showcasing all of these iconic locations from the original 2002 release in depth, and the rest will be in the rapid-fire section of the video. I can't do everything in detail, okay? We'd be running for over 3 hours. I have a job. I can't do it. So, let's start this adventure in the right place. Fresh off the boat. We start completely naked. No gear, no money, no potions, no nothing. I find ESO too easy for my taste, so I add a few challenges to make the game harder. The rules can also be found in the description if you'd like to read them. Anyway, we scrounge around on the ship for a bit for some basic loot. Trying to see if I can find... Aha! Look at that. And then head above deck. I mean, I'm pretending like I didn't actually walk back here and position myself on the bottom of the boat, because this is not at all where you spawn in, but yeah, it looks good. Now, I really like the Elder Scrolls lore. It's probably my favorite fantasy universe, but Seyda Neen shouldn't be here, right? I thought it was a newly established Imperial colony in Morrowind, 741 years in the future. There's an NPC in ESO who explains it was in fact the Gold Coast Trading Company who established it, and this guy was hired to build it. Since he's an Imperial, he used Imperial architecture. Did a bit more digging and found a Reddit post from what I can assume was a ZOS staff member. Basically, Seyda Neen was too iconic, and although it didn't entirely make sense to include, they really wanted to, so they found a way to retcon it slightly. That's an honest, straightforward answer, and I can respect that. Moving on to the actual content, Seyda Neen is absolutely packed with stuff to do. I mean, it kind of bums me out to say it, but I think there's only one entire quest in all of Seyda Neen. Obviously, I'm poking fun, but yeah, one mission was slightly disappointing. The quest tied to this iconic location is mediocre at best. The guards were drugged so a slaver ship could pass by to a nearby island. Holy the dogs are out. What's going on down there? Your job is to prove it was the governor of Seyda Neen who's actually been partnered up with the slavers for some extra cash. Coolest part about this mission is that there's a stealth mechanic where you need to hide in a basket. And that's all she wrote for Seyda Neen. Technically, there's a nearby delve called Zanisipalu, which, depending on your dialogue choices, has you rat out a skooma addict to the local authorities in town. The Zanisipalu delve is in Morrowind as well, although not even remotely close to the scale and complexity. Okay. Yeah, this definitely wasn't here in Morrowind. This is what the delve looks like in Morrowind. In all fairness, even for ESO, this delve looks pretty great.
Hot diggity dog! This place is magnificent.
Anyway, the last thing to do in Seyda Neen is to pick up the main quest, and don't worry, I'm not going to drop fragments of it here and there. The main story will be organized and have its own section of the video. But from Seyda Neen, I move on to the only next logical step, Balmora, through the preferred method of transportation, of course. Oh wait, you can't. I can't even go to Balmora from Seyda Neen. There's only 2 options for the Siltstrider, and none of them are even where I'd want to go, because the other option would be Vivec City. Pulling up to Balmora on foot for the first time was a sight to behold. It was the exact opposite of Seyda Neen. This is crazy. I mean, compared to Seyda Neen, which is basically a 1-for-1 remake of Seyda Neen and Morrowind, this is kind of cool, I won't lie. Like, this is a better, bigger city with what appears to be more infrastructure, a working river, like, for boats and stuff, like... And by the way, this place has a Siltstrider, so I have no idea why I couldn't take one before. Anyway, I tried to find some of the cool landmarks like Caius' house, but to no avail. To me, that means Balmora must have been completely wiped off the map, right? And somehow Seyda Neen was perfectly fine though. I will say, it was very cool to see the Red Mountain actually spewing lava in the distance rather than Morrowind's endless ashy fog. After exploring a bit, I decided to do some questing, and as far as I could tell, Balmora only has 2 quests. Unlike Seyda Neen, however, Balmora's major quest is quite girthy. It took me almost 3 hours to complete. In short, we learned that House Redoran is actually the ones controlling Balmora instead of Hlaalu, and I gotta say, I think Redoran's doing a bit of a better job. Anyway, the Redoran counselor in charge of Balmora has 2 estranged children. His son was exiled from House Redoran and joined the local Ashlander camp, and his daughter fled after hearing the news of her brother's exile. Unfortunately, the father ordered an attack on the Ashlander camp and burned them all alive, including his son, whom he didn't know had sought refuge there. His daughter, upon finding out, goes on a bit of a rampage, and the tale ends with the tragic death of the entire family line. Again, that's 3 hours summarized into like 20 seconds, but this quest was pretty dark for ESO and decently complex. There's a couple of choices you can make that alter the story. In meaningful ways, I don't know. But at the end, you can choose to kill the daughter or save her, which has an immediate effect on the tone. The rewards for this quest were also very good. The other quest in Balmora isn't nearly as elaborate. Another estranged father basically asks you to drop some memory stones before he dies so his children can forgive him. On this mission, however, I came across that first Dwemer ruin you explore in Morrowind for that stupid Rubik's Cube. Unfortunately, you can't get up there in ESO. It's blocked off with a wall, which is kinda disappointing. It's a pretty noteworthy ruin in the original game. Anyway, after doing everything I could in Balmora, I decided to hike up north to Caldera, which seemed to be replaced with this structure. Further north, we come across Ald'ruhn, which I guess I'm mispronouncing because they call it Ald'ruhn.
Ald'ruhn.
Aldrin. Anyway, this was pretty cool. This was the first area I've been to that's in its developing stages compared to the city I remember from Morrowind. You got the giant crab with legs, which I don't think it had in Morrowind, those must have decayed, but the surrounding city is very primitive with Ashlander yurts scattered around. When you go inside the crab, you can also tell it's being inhabited by the tribes rather than the noble houses like it is in Morrowind. There's only one quest for Ald'ruhn, and it's basically just a fetch quest where you gather offerings. It's only about 15 minutes long, but there's an interesting part where you investigate this dude's tomb and find out his ancestors were the ones to fell the giant crab. I didn't know that, but that's all there was to do in this entire area. I want to talk about the city of Vivec next, but to do that we need to go through the main story. Like the rest of the video, it's going to take a shit ton of editing, but we're going to whittle this 7-hour campaign down to about 5 minutes. This is an insane compression of content. There will be details missed, but the goal is to provide you with a faithful and accurate summary. So fasten your seatbelts, it's summary time. The main story picks up just outside of Seyda Neen. A group of priests are trying to locate ancient spirits on Vivec's orders. You haven't even accepted the quest yet, and Azura possesses an innocent woman to declare that you are the savior of her people. To be fair, she kinda does this in Morrowind too. Anyway, that catapults you into exploring the Andrano ancestral tomb for Vivec to locate this guy's dead grandma. For some reason, this dead old lady holds the answers to the almighty Vivec's questions, but she does also have some interesting allusion to the heart and Dagoth. The heart remains safe? Talk about the heart of Lorkhan? As the enemy of old returned? Interesting. So Vivec was thinking Dagoth returned, but no. After getting the answers you wanted, you head to Vivec to tell him yourself. Yeah, I know. I guess 700 years in the past they were pretty liberal with day passes to the palace. I barge right into the palace chambers and come face to face with the false god. Basically, some things are bothering him and he's beginning to lose his power. He's not sure what, but we use some crazy crystals to help give us some things to investigate. Turns out there's an Ashlander wreaking havoc by the name of Chodala. I thought Chodala, I just remember that name because it sounds like Chode. I thought he was one of the previous Nerevarines, or like one of the failed Nerevarines in the cave. Turns out I was right. Mr. Chode's sister Saren tells me he thinks he's got what it takes to be the next Nerevarine. His next step is to unite the 4 tribes to make Morrowind great again.
And make Morrowind great again.
Whoa, sounding a little like an unnamed politician, wouldn't you say? You have to investigate some other crap too, but it's not really important. You return to Vivec to find him in an incredibly weakened state. His archcanon tells me, with the findings I've discovered, he believes Chodala is using an artifact created by Sotha to siphon power from Vivec. He wants you to go back and talk to his sister Saren and try to investigate further. Vivec is getting notably weaker, and people are beginning to notice changes to the environment. Huh. That volcano definitely looks more active. Heading back to Ald'ruhn, you meet up with Saren once again, who informs you the Wise Woman has made a journey to the Cavern of the Incarnate to seek Azura's guidance. Fortunately, you're able to enter regardless of the time of day. It's clearly the middle of the day, but, you know, they can't really have this only open at certain times of the day, I guess. You speak to a few of the previous failed incarnates, and then Azura once you're finished. Azura agrees Chodala is a false Nerevarine and says it's up to you to prove it. You do by basically humiliating him in court.
Chodala, we deny your claim. You are not the Nerevarine.
Unsurprisingly, he runs away with the staff used to drain Vivec's power. You track the Chodester down, and after defeating him, reclaim the staff. Was a little disappointed you couldn't get his famous glass axe. I don't even get his axe? His glass war axe? I just get some gold? This is bullshit. You bring the staff back to restore all the stolen power to Vivec, and find out the archcanon is actually Barbas, the dog of Clavicus Vile. Holy shit, it's Barbas! Turns out he corrupted the staff to reveal the location of Sotha Clockwork City. Vivec basically dies, or is almost dead anyway, and you need Azura's help to save Vvardenfell and the Dunmer people. Vivec's lack of power is evident when you exit the temple.
Lord Vivec, don't let us die!
Oh my...
Vivec, save us!
So you need to act quickly. Azura does agree to assist you out of her love for the Dark Elves, and teleports one of Sotha clockwork mages to help you locate the city. I'd only ever heard rumors about the Clockwork City, and it was probably the coolest thing I've explored in ESO so far as a steampunk fan. Oh my god, it's the real thing, I'm getting shrunk. Oh my god. This place looks crazy. But back to the story. Basically, Barbas is trying to use the staff with Vivec's energy to open a portal for his master, Clavicus Vile. For whatever reason, Clavicus Vile wants to get his hands on the Clockwork City. Anyway, you defeat Barbas, reclaim Vivec's energy, and transport it back into the living god to restore him to his full power. That's the quick and dirty summary of ESO's Morrowind campaign. And I definitely have some comments about it after just finishing the 2002 Morrowind. There's a couple things I found a little weird, and if you know the answer to any of these, please let me know in the comments. If there's spoilers for future DLC, just tell me what DLC it's answered in. Okay, my first question is, why doesn't Azura hate the Tribunal? Their rise to power is somewhat recent on the timeline, converting her loyal Dunmer against her. She should hate the false gods in this game way more than she does in the Elder Scrolls 3. But she doesn't. She's almost friendly, assisting Vivec in his time of need, and although she makes it clear she's doing it for the Dunmer, not for him, this is an opportune time just to wait it out. He's basically bedridden. I understand the Nerevarine prophecies, but she could have let Vivec stay super weak so that Meteor falls and forces some of the Dunmer to rethink who they worship. It wouldn't be the fall of the Tribunal, but it would have been extremely beneficial for Azura. Why is Chodala buried in the Cavern of the Incarnate? You're telling me this guy lies about being the Nerevarine, deceives and kills a handful of Ashlanders, and is rewarded by being buried in the cavern? Can you imagine in 741 years how many people would lie to unite the clans just to gain a little bit of power? This place should be filled to the rim with corpses if every liar got buried here. No way Chodala was the one and only person to fib for some clout. I refuse. I have no idea why Clavicus Vile wants the Clockwork City. Best case scenario, this story leaves you on a massive cliffhanger for the next DLC. Worst case scenario, if you never buy the next DLC, you've basically accomplished nothing. The only thing that changed in 7 hours was the position of the rock. I guess we learn Clavicus Vile and his mysterious associates are after the Clockwork City, but I don't think you need 7 hours to get to that realization. That being said, I think the story overall for this zone is actually pretty good, especially considering it's technically base game content. It comes with your purchase of the Elder Scrolls Online. And as far as base game content goes, and I have a bit of experience, this was pretty awesome. So many people told me this is their favorite DLC ever, and maybe it's because I just finished the Elder Scrolls 3, but I did not get that feeling. You kinda ended in the same spot you started. If I had to change one tiny detail to give this campaign a little more punch, it would be that this slip of Vivec's power, which led to a disturbance in the Red Mountain, ultimately was the catalyst for Dagoth Ur's awakening. Sure, it'll still take him a couple hundred years to fully wake up before the Days of Fire, but that was why he started to wake up. I don't know. I feel like Clavicus Vile stealing Vivec's power to be the first domino to fall for Dagoth's awakening would have given this story a lot more historical relevance. Just an idea, though. Anyway, I recapped the main story so I could talk about the city of Vivec, and let me be clear. I hate this city. Every time I came here in Morrowind, I started to sympathize with Dagoth Ur a little bit more. I gotta say though, I kinda like it in the Elder Scrolls Online. Granted, it's less than half the size, but of the ziggurats that are constructed, they're easier to navigate, the interiors are more interesting, and they don't make me dread coming to the city. And this city is popping. I don't think I've ever seen as many players running around in ESO like I did in Vivec. The palace in ESO also makes the Morrowind one look, lackluster, to say the least. It was also very interesting to see the story behind the Ministry of Truth and how it got as close as it did to Vivec City. The library is also drastically different and is the only place in this city where you'll find an actual quest. Basically, the librarians are looking for rubbings on ancient tombstones to reveal the location of a secret library. This is a collectible mission. There's 29 tombstones to scribe, and it's related to one of the major achievements for the zone. I don't know if I'd say the finale of this quest is worthwhile, but it is interesting. Other than that, there's daily missions, which don't really count, and a fetch quest to Sadrith Mora to deliver some mushrooms. No additional major quest lines for this iconic city, unfortunately. Since we already took a boat to Sadrith Mora, let's talk about it. This city is the only place in this video's itinerary that I did not visit in my first playthrough of Morrowind, which honestly isn't a massive deal breaker because there's very little in common between these two versions. It's House Telvanni, which means this chunk of the map is Slavery City.
Today's subject, slavery.
What I did miss from Morrowind is the contempt the Dark Elves have of the beast races. 99% of the time in this DLC, they're very polite to me, but they're definitely not in Sadrith Mora. I'm very happy they decided to increase the racism here. And do not clip that out of context, please. There's some polite Telvanni, sure, but this was the first time I was called slurs that I remember from the Elder Scrolls 3.
Thanks for all your help, Noir.
My first Enwa of the game. There's a couple of quests here. It's actually the first city I've been to with more than just 2, but the most notable is a 2-hour-long saga to free some Argonians from slavery. This was the first time in ESO that I've ever felt like my race played a part in the story. Aha, a unique dialogue option. Why do I see so many of my fellow Argonians in bondage? I had access to many unique dialogue options. Look at that, another unique voice line. I think this is the first time in ESO I've ever seen unique voice lines for Argonians talking to Argonians. This is pretty cool. And NPCs treated me worse. I actually felt like an Argonian for the first time in this game. The story itself has a pretty solid ending, but it ran on for a bit too long for my taste. Essentially, you're helping a female Argonian free herself and climb the ranks in House Telvanni to eventually save her enslaved boyfriend. Very similar to the Greek tale of Icarus, even though she had the means to save her boyfriend, she kept trying to climb higher and higher in House Telvanni until she's eventually imprisoned. You save her, but her boyfriend has had enough waiting around as a slave and stages a final rescue for some of his captured friends. At the end, the Argonian you've been helping doesn't want her boyfriend to leave, and ironically considers making him a slave to save herself the heartbreak. You can choose to agree with her or not, but I thought this was a very interesting story overall. As an Argonian specifically, this was the most immersive side quest I've ever done in ESO. It really reminded me of something you'd find in the 2002 Morrowind. The rewards for this quest were also very good, including this cool staff. Now this is a good looking staff. The last location I want to go in detail on is Tel Fyr. Besides Vivec, Tel Fyr houses one of the most iconic Dunmer of all time, Vvardenfell Fyr. The design of the mushroom towers in ESO is wildly different than in Morrowind. Even the interiors are kind of opposites of each other. Morrowind is cramped and crowded with many corridors, and ESO is open with large central rooms. Additionally, in the Elder Scrolls Online, this tower is a 12-man raid, so 90% of ESO players who do this DLC will never experience the only story with Vvardenfell Fyr. Alright, that's the last time I do that. For the purpose of storytelling, I decided to bite the bullet and take one for the team. I have never done a raid before, so huge thank you to all of these kind people who joined me for this experience. The story of Tel Fyr is that while Vvardenfell was excavating the basement, he came across a rift that he wants to research. His standing theory is that this rift intersects with the Clockwork City. I think it was supposed to be a dormant connection, but when Vvardenfell's workers discovered it, it began to spew out clockwork machines to protect itself. You need to defeat the first wave of guardians until the rift is weak enough for you to transport through. You pop out inside the Halls of Fabrication, a massive processing facility that recycles Sothasil's clockwork machines into new fabricants. The halls are protected by the Assembly General, an artificial intelligence that can assume command of this massive Dwemer Colossus to protect itself. With you and your party destroying the Colossus, Vvardenfell is able to get to the control room and disable the brain of the Assembly General and close the rift. Way back at the start, Vvardenfell sends assistants to inform the Temple and Vivec that the rift was no longer stable and he was going to shut it down. So I think Vivec was aware of this rift to his brother's realm, and perhaps severing this connection between Vvardenfell and the Clockwork City will have repercussions in the future. That being said, this was probably some of the most fun I've ever had in ESO. Yeah, I died quite a few times. Oh, great. It's hard for me not to hit it with my laser. Yeah, I killed myself.
3, 2, 1, go.
I don't have
synergy. None of us have synergy.
Oh. But huge thanks to Azura, her crew, and my subscribers who joined me that night. You can't say you've experienced Morrowind without a healthy dose of Vvardenfell. So I just finished the entire video and realized a lot of these clips on the last couple minutes are corrupted. They show up perfectly fine on my computer, and whenever I record new clips now, they're all corrupted. So this is a really big issue that I need to fix. I can't make videos until I fix this. That being said, for the rest of this video, you're going to be seeing screenshots instead of clips. So I apologize for that, but there's literally nothing I can do about it. I think there's something actually wrong with my computer, and it's probably going to stop me from making videos for a while until I can figure it out. Okay, we're trying to keep this video under 30 minutes, and judging by my recording software, we're already running a bit long, so let's jump into the rapid fire round. Any Sauron fans out there? Only reason I ever went to this city was the strippers for that one Fighters Guild mission, and they're not even here in ESO, so what's the point? The main quest for this area was cool though. It's like a vigilante Batman mission, and you get a costume for beating it. In ESO, Voss is combined with Tel Mora. It's like one big area. The quest isn't anything to write home about, but it's here, I guess. The Urshulaku camp is not on the right spot on the map, but since they're nomads, I suppose it makes sense that they move around. They're kind of unimportant in ESO, unfortunately, at least for their location quests. Molag Mar is here, and I'm sure all 7 Molag Mar fans are overjoyed. The quest for the settlement is actually pretty cool. It's like a boogeyman quest where you hunt down this monster called the Ruddy Man. I don't think I'm allowed to say on YouTube how the Ruddy Man was created, so you'll need to look that up on your own. Holomayan is here as well, but it's fairly different. It's just really thin and tall, and unfortunately the mouth doesn't open at all. I wish it did, even if it was just a visual effect that didn't allow you to enter. The fact that it's just a static model is a bit disappointing. I finally learned how to pronounce Nisus, since there's actually voice acting in this game. The quest has you shut down this Dwemer organ that's driving a bunch of people insane. And it's actually a pretty big city. Unfortunately, you can't go into the Red Mountain at all, except for this one player house. The player house is right over Asal Kushalit. I definitely butchered that, which is a Daedric ruin, and it definitely has some Daedric vibes, so that's alright, I guess. There is a public dungeon that lets you investigate the 6th house a bit, but it's really too bad this massive chunk of the map is literally empty. There's so many ruins to explore in the Elder Scrolls 3 in this area, so my hopes were up. You also can't get to this northern island of Vvardenfell at all, which is disappointing. It feels like 30% of this map is completely unplayable. And this zone is considerably smaller than Morrowind, the game, already, so that feels unnecessary. Anyway, that wraps up our journey through Vvardenfell in the Elder Scrolls Online. Comparing it to Morrowind from 2002 has definitely been an eye-opener. ESO's take on Vvardenfell has its high points, the improved visuals, the different feel of the cities, and the added history to some of these iconic locations, but there were also moments that left me missing the more intricate, atmospheric experience of the original release. It's comparing apples to oranges, right? It's two different eras of gaming and two different genres of gaming. What we lose in complexity and depth, we gain in modern conveniences. I'm very happy I chose to play the 2002 Morrowind first. This version in the Elder Scrolls Online feels vaguely familiar, which I like. It shouldn't be a one-for-one 700 years in the past. I wish they did more questing in each city, even if it's just fetch quests that get you to explore the surrounding area. The 2002 Morrowind is full of kind of crappy questing in each city, but it's your prerogative to do. In ESO, I'd go to some of these massive, iconic cities, do a single quest, and there was nothing left. But hey, maybe that's just me. What do you think? Does ESO's version of Vvardenfell hold up, or are you sticking with Morrowind for your Dunmer fix? As always, thank you so much for sticking around to this point. This video probably took me over 30 hours to make, recording Elder Scrolls Online, jumping back to Morrowind, narrating, editing, you know the deal. So I really appreciate your attention. Huge thank you to my members, of course, for your continued support. If there's any other ESO zones you'd like to see me try for the first time, make sure to drop them in the comments below. But that's it for me in this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.